People were talking about it, and then when we listened to one of the podcasts on YouTube about with Nick Estes, and he had a guest on there, and I think they were talking about another book, but they kept bringing up the tip and the spear and how good it is. So we're gonna figure this out together. We're gonna see how good this book is. I've heard it's pretty good. We're gonna read it. Tip of the Spear: Black Radicalism, Prison Repression, and the Long Attica Revolt by Oresum. I can't say Burton. All right, let's see here. So this is in I can't remember where this is at. In the it's probably underneath anti-racism, right? I don't remember, Joe. I don't remember.
Check.
You're gonna check? Okay. Let me know when you start the recording again. Okay, good. Tip of the spear: Black radicalism, prison repression, blah blah blah. Okay. Like Costello. A little context, knowledge. Right. Let's go to introduction. Actually, should we read the acknowledgement? No. No, because it's just acknowledging a whole bunch of people. All right. Introduction. All right. Oh my gosh, I think I do have some gifts. Let me go get them real quick. I have only 35 coins. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. That's all I have, Khadija. Introduction. Here we go. On August 18th, 1973, Queen Mother Audley Moore, a stalwart communist and a Pan-Africanist revolutionary, traveled to Green Haven prison and delivered a remarkable keynote address. A video of the event shows stylishly dressed black men, women, and children seated in rows of folded chairs, standing in small groups, eating, laughing, talking, and embracing. Were it not for the massive concrete walls encircling the gathering, one might easily mistake it for a typical picnic or celebration. However, the peaceful and bonalico, oh my gosh, I can't say this word. Will it say it out loud for me?
On August 18,
Ah,
1973.
of course not. All right, I'm gonna look up this word, everybody. There we go, new book. I think Joe found. It's bucolic, my bad. Bucolic scene. Belied and profound violence simmering just beneath the surface. In the inaugural years of the 1970s were among the most explosive and lethal in U.S. prison history, due in no small measures to militant rebellions that erupted, erupt, ruptured carceral institutions across the nation. The 2-year anniversary of Attica, the most famous of these conflicts, which was less than a month away. Hundreds of Attica brothers, the incarcerated rebels, who seized the prison and endured the state orchestrated massacre that followed, had been transferred to Green Haven, and many now gather to hear Moore speak. Standing before the modest podium, Moore explained that Green Haven imprisoned men were enduring recaptivity, offering an analysis made popular by her political Monty Malcolm X. She argued that prison walls made visible a condition of incarceration that is consecutive in Black life in America. Black people are a captive nation. The physical imprisonment that therefore been captured, doubly so, more than explained that it was not the captives, but the white man who was the real criminal. She reminded her audience, comprised of people various convicted of robbery, assault, rape, murder, and drug-related crimes, that none of them had ever stole entire countries, cultures, or peoples, or sold human beings into slavery or profit. Although some of them had tried to imitate the white man, she continued, they had never really stolen, or neither had they ever really murdered. Have you taken mothers and strung them up by their heels? She asked, and took your knives and slit their bellies so that their unborn babies can fall to the ground, and then took your heels and crushed those babies into the ground? Have you ever dropped bombs on people and killed whole countries of people? Have you done that, brothers? Given that American empire is constituted through apocalyptic violence and incalculable theft. Hold on a second, everybody. Hold on a second. All right. Sorry, everybody. I had to go do something real quick. My fault. All right. So, still on page 13. Given that the American empire is constituted through apocalyptic violence and incalculable theft, Moore argued that crimes committed by the human spoils of war were necessarily derivative of the organized crime of the state. Moore explains that as students... Wait, what's going on? Hold on a second, everybody, please. Moore explained that as a student of Marcus Garvey and a veteran of the Black liberation struggle since the 1930s, she had accumulated valuable insight into the science of white supremacy. With the horrors of the Attica massacre fresh in the audience's mind, she told the appalling story of her grandfather's lynching, explaining that prison functioned in tandem with other tactics of white patriarchal domination. The aim of the white man's science was to, oh my gosh, I don't know this word, denature African people, to crush their spirits, destroy their cognitive autonomy, and transform them into obedient black people with no, they use the N-word, with no knowledge of their history or will to resist. More likened this process of the taming of lions, who can be caged and conditioned to purr like kittens at the crack of a whip. She concluded her address by enjoining the captive population of the formerly imprisoned as well as the nominally free to reject this oppressive science, to neuter a sovereign black consciousness, to embrace armed struggle, and to rely on each other for the battles that lay ahead. From only then would the captive nation be able to decisively liberate itself from the imprisoned ensnaring it. Queen Mother Moore's unconventional analysis unsettles common sense notions of crime, violence, imprisonment, and the state, politics, science, temporality. I can't say that word. Temporality. I'm gonna make sure I'm saying that word right. I'm second guessing on my names. I was right. It's temporality. Sorry, temporality and the ideal of the human self itself. Her narrative, her narrative method, dislodges this concept, these concepts of criminology, sociology, and anthropology, and other liberal formations of knowledge, repurposing them for black revolutionary ends by theorizing black prisoners as recaptives and situating prisons within the longue durée of European colonialism. She forces a reckoning with a non-linear, fractured, and cyclical understanding of his historical movement. Her visceral rendering of gendered racial violence disrupts past and present attempts to construct the Attica massacre, during which state actors slaughtered at least 39 people and sexually tortured hundreds more as aboriginals. Let me find out what this word means. Hold on, everybody.
During which state actors slaughtered at least 39 people and sexually tortured hundreds more, as aberrational or
aberrational or exceptional. Rather, without every mentioning it directly, she calls attention to the renaissance between these recent spectacles of violence and supposedly bygone regime of chattel slavery, racial apartheid, and settler colonialism. Moreover, her argument that the white man's allegedly objective science involves methods of taming black rebellions is suggestive of concurrent efforts by the CIA-affiliated behavioral psychologists, physicians, and others to neutralize political radicality by chemically, surgically, and electronically altering brain function. Conveyed during the movement the moment in which the struggle behind the walls was taking on a less combative posture. Moore's oratory challenged the state's authority to criminalize and incarcerate black communities while affirming the captives' right, indeed their duty to struggle against the incarceral world. These ideas, thematic concern, and political imperatives prepared us for the narrative that follows. And of course, I got my first one. Jesus Christ. Fucking assholes. Fuck you, TikTok. CIA affiliate behavior. Okay, KKK. Black community, while affirming the captives' right, indeed their duties to struggle against the incarceral world. These ideas, thematic concerns, and political imperatives prepare us for the narrative that follows. The tip of the spear argues that prisons are war. They are state strategies of race wars, class war, colonization, and counterinsurgency. But they are also domains of militant contestation, where captives population reject these white supremacist systems of power and invent zones of autonomy, freedom, and liberation. The book's major task is threefold. One, I analyzed that I term the Long Attica Revolt a genealogy of black radical and revolutionary struggles that emerged among New York's captive population during the early 1970s. Two, I illuminate that I call prison pacification a campaign of racist and political repression, white supremacist science, and organized violence advanced by the network of state actors, various located within penal hierarchies, police agencies, foreign threaters of war, counterinsurgencies, think tanks, universities, the FBI, and the CIA. Three, I examine how the protracted collision of these projects give rise to new formations of consciousness, politics, sociality, gender, and being, as well as new, which is to say, renewed, technologies of radical colonial domination, dehumanization, and extraction. The war of which I write is fundamentally asymmetrical, not only in terms of each side's capacities and methods, but also the term of their goals. Through prison pacification, state actors wage a war of conquest on the subject population as part of broader efforts to accumulate capital and preserve the dominance of white men. Their method of combat combines siege warfare and counterinsurgency warfare. Through siege warfare, the antagonists surround the enemy fortification and institute blockades on the flow of resources in the attempt to starve the surrounding populations to submission. In this context, to starve must be understood capaciously as a calculated denial of the material, social, and culture of political nutrients necessary for reproducing defiant black life and consciousness across generations. Counterinsurgency, according to the U.S. Army, is a style of warfare that involves military, paramilitary, political, economic, psychological, and civic actions taken by a government to defeat insurgents. As we become clear, the planners and the administrators of this incarceral siege aim to crush the revolt by deploying a range of techniques, both hard and soft, across these terrains of intervention. In contrast to these incarceral warfare projects, the Long Attica Revolt was not a war of conquest or accumulation. Against incarceral siege, revolting captives waged a people's war, a counter-war, of what exiled black revolutionary Robert F. Williams called a guerrilla war of self-defense, popularly characterized as a war of the weak against the strong. Guerrilla warfare involves irregular, small-scale attacks that aim to disrupt the social order, raising the cost of businesses as usual to a level that is unsustainable, for the ruling authority, forcing them to relinquish control. Within and against captivity, rebels employed diverse methodologies of attack: political education, critique, protest, organizing, cultural production, litigation, subversion, refusal, rebellion, retaliation, hostage taking, sabotage, armed struggle, and the intimate labor of care. Like More, they saw prison walls not as boundaries between freedom and unfreedom, but as material demarcations of different intensities of capacity, of captivity, invulnerability, and rebellion. Attica was and is the multiracial structure of revolt led by people who self-identify as black. However, the blackness they claim was as much, if not more, a collective political designation as an individual identity. Through this rubric, black skins is insufficient for blackness, as More's derision of black skins, as black-skinned inwards, black people, makes clear. For decades, combatant theorists and politically engaged academics have conceptualized political blackness as a mode of consciousness emerging from the collective historical experiences of oppression and struggle. Attica erupted out of this context, a historical moment in which people whose African ancestors were enslaved in what became known as Latin America increasingly embraced their African heritage. Moreover, conditions of extreme carceral duress coerced some of the imprisoned and destitute whites who black modalities of rebellion. Authority itself may be going down a fast track towards the, oh my gosh, I can't say this word, but after it, it's the N word with the ER, but it says ization. Just want everyone to know. Of everyone. Explained a white Attica survivor, forging with cauldrons of racial, sexual, and class oppression. The long Attica revolt threatened the existence of prisons and social order, and the very coherence of white men, a cohesively universalized paradigm of human beings. Contrary to most academic scholarships of prison-based movements and rebellions, tip of the spear dissenters incarcerated people's formal demands to improve prison conditions. Those struggles over access to decent food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and visitation privileges, humane parole policies, and so on are an important site of political contestation. These appeals constitute a prison movement. Minimum demands calls for bare survival amid G-side. Investigations of prison insurgency tend to focus on this rational and pragmatic class of demands, while ignoring, dismissing, or downplaying calls to tear down the walls and free all political prisoners as unrealistic, hyperbolic, immature, or too extreme. Moreover, as Delin Rodriguez has shown, even these minimum demands, which tend to be articulated in the form of the petition to the state, or routinely analyzed in unsophisticated ways that circumscribe the horizon of incarcerated people's ambition to a desire for full cooperation within existing regimes of citizenship, rights, and humanity. I am not arguing against the common refrain that incarcerated people just want to be treated as human beings. In many cases, this is certainly true, but in others, it is the conception of the human itself that is seen as a problem, as the dominant way of interpreting in anti-incarceral struggles. The focus on internal demands on the state narrows the scope of people's actual desire and facilitates the mystification of prison abolition, revolutionary and anti-colonial origins. Tip of the Spear argues that the Long Attica Revolt was itself a demand, uttered through what Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously termed, quote, the language of the unheard. This riot, oh my gosh, another one, another appeal. Jesus Christ. This riot, this rebellion, this revolutionary upheaval was the internal demand, a call for arms directed not towards the state, which did not have the capacity to comprehend or, oh my gosh, or cessate the rebellion's most fulsome desire, but towards allied communities across prison walls and beyond U.S. territorial boundaries. The content of this minimum demand was the abolition of prisons, the abolition of war, the abolition of racial capitalism, the abolition of white men, and the emergence of new methods of social life, not predicated on enclosure, extraction, domination, and dehumanization. In the pages that follow, I carefully excavate incarcerated people's protracted and often fatal struggle to realize their most unruly, unreasonable, and irrational demands. In doing so, I reframe our understanding of Attica and Black rebellion more broadly. At the tail end of our conversation, Che Navies, a former minister of education for the prison-based formation of the Young Lords Party and the veteran of the Attica Rebellion, articulated a version of a maximum demand with rare clarity. We have covered the highs and lows of his life, of struggle behind the walls, the relentless brutality of prison existence, and the trajectory of his political radicalization, the ecstasy of achieving the rebellion's illegal freedom, and the unspeakable horrors of massacres he survived. Like most of the interviews I conducted while researching this book, it was a heavy discussion that was filled with rage, tears, laughter, and the wonderment that surfaces when someone rediscovers a lost thread of memory that had lain dormant for decades. As we prepare to go our separate ways, I thanked Che for entrusting me with his memories and analysis. He responded, quote, listen, all I could say is, we brothers, man, we need each other. It's not only me, but you. That's what keeps us going. Exchange. It keeps the spirit going, and it keeps us moving forward, moving towards freedom. The more you acquire, the more I acquire. And without you, it is not me. You make me, and I make you. Che poetic reflection illuminates the abolitionist ethical philosophy at the core of the revolt. Though immediately triggered by carceral repression and violence, Attica signified a positive demand that exceeded normative frameworks of the political and challenges hegemonic norms of individualism that are at the heart of capitalism, patriarchy, and white Western humanism. Decades before the term entered the popular lexicon, it has been diluted and co-opted. Attica rebels engaged in a praxis of abolition, generating abolitionist knowledge, theory, and practice amid conditions of incarceral war. They not only imagined and dreamed a world without prisons, but put their bodies and lives on the line to materialize their version in the face of determined opposition. What the hell? What the hell? My pad just stopped working. All right, now to find out. Determined opposition. The shape of the world they began to build in place of what they began to tear down was not predetermined. Rather, it was improvised through the unfolding of the revolt, a collective movement towards freedom. Theirs was a freedom that was not only material and political, but cognitive and metaphysical. A freedom neutered within and between people who came to understand themselves as new kinds of beings for a new kind of world. A freedom that could not be granted, that could only be seized. The Long Attica Revolt, in other words, is abolition. It is a paradigm, a blueprint, imperfect to be sure, but invaluable nonetheless, for creating an abolitionist world. Shea's assertion that the power of our principled brotherhood exceeds the sum of its parts points to another major theme of this book. Nurture? Is it nurture? Or nurture? Is it nurture? Sorry. Man.
Yeah, I think it's nurture because neuter means to keep it from something.
Thank you. Manhood, masculinity, patriarchy, and gender life under domestic war. Tip of the spear focus on struggles enacted by people incarcerated in prison, designated for men who, by and large, understood incarceration as a process that attacked their manhood, and who engaged in rebellion as a humanizing and indeed a masculinizing process. As such, it analyzed the complex ways that claims to manhood are constructed, contested, and violently negated in the process of struggle, and shows that the content of the manhood proclaimed by the rebels was radically different from that enacted by their captors across years of learning with from progressive radicals and revolutionary black men who rebelled within and against the racist and patriarchal system. I have learned that a gendered struggle, a struggle to redefine manhood itself, to create an ethical and life-giving manhood, was and is indispensable to this revolt, making this book. The tip of the spear is my response to the intergenerational assignment that Eddie Ellis and others gave me nearly a decade ago. I met Ellis in 2009 while facilitating political education workshops with the imprisoned Morturum Project, MORATORIUM Project, an organization he helped establish after spending 23 years behind the walls. In 2014, I began conducting research for what evolved into this book. I interviewed Eddie, hoping to learn about his life as a journalist for the magazine The Liberator, his role in the Harlem Black Panther Party, his experience in Attica during the rebellion, and his work as part of the Green Haven think tank, a prison-based formation whose research influenced multi-generations of activists, scholars, and policymakers, often in acknowledged ways. During our interview, which lasted upward of 6 hours, Eddie shared his feelings that he and those with whom he was in community had failed to theorize, document, and contextualize the moments they led behind prison walls. We have never been able to use the tools of academia to demonstrate that our analysis is a better analysis, he said. He then suggested that perhaps it could play the role that I make it my mission to use the resources of academic scholarship to rigorously elaborate a genealogy of knowledge production that today largely remains criminalized, pathologized, and intentionally hidden from the public view. It was a transformative interview in many ways. by unfortunately, it was our last Ellis. It was our last. Ellis died of cancer shortly after that conversation. The arguments and narratives that follow are the results of intensive research in institutional and personal archival collections combined with repeated, extended, and open-ended oral history interviews I conducted with more than 6 people, more of them Black and Latinx, men and women who participated in radical social movements within and beyond prison between the 1960s and the 1990s. Another one. God, ever since I opened this book up, man, holy fuck. Jesus. As such, this work extends a legacy of anthropological research carried out in service of anti-colonial liberatory and abolitionist projects. The operationalized scholar Mitchell Rolfe Terrellot's insight that non-academics are critical producers and historiographers. I'm sorry, I can't. Historiography. It's not that I don't know the word, it's that I can't say it. Yep. I'm reading it.
Historiography. Is that the
Yeah,
word?
I can't say it. I can't say it. That's not only. Thank you, Gray, for being here. That is not only do such subjects engage in concrete struggles to transform material reality, they also strive to define the very term under which some situations can be described. It also builds on the work of theorist Cedric Robinson, who shows us that to contend with Black radicalism on its own terms, we must unshackle our analytical frameworks from the cognitive prison of white Western rationality and refuse to impose knowledge paradigms developed to justify the current social order upon movements that aim to unmake the order, generated by deep and long-term relationships of trust. Any analytical method takes the Black radical epistemologies, narratives, and modes of argumentations of those with whom I am in community as both a point of departure and lodestar. Moreover, it employs an ethnographic approach to historical narration in which I, the reflexive, authorial subject, remained present in the story, thinking and theorizing with the protagonist of this struggle to collectively scrutinize the meanings of key ideas, discussions, tensions, and events. It is this relations of accountability to the intellectuals and the combatants of this undeclared war, both living and dead, and to the ancestral traditions that nurtured them, that distinguishes this book from previous treatments of Attica and from the growing body of academic scholarship of Black radicalism within and beyond prison. The dominant understanding of Attica was a 4-day event that was confined to a single prison and primarily aimed to ameliorate oppressive conditions as facilitated by interpretive what? I gotta look at this word, everybody. Interpretive practices and prioritize knowledge yield by state sources over knowledge produced the archive of rebellion. In contrast to the imperatives of this counterinsurgent historiography, Black radical ways of knowing constitute the primary sources of the study. To gather these sources, I have pursued, excavated, and analyzed, the recollection letters, treaties, manuals, journalism, testimonies, and even the rumors, legends, and conspiracy theories generated by people who understood themselves and were understood by the state to be revolutionaries. The Long Attica Revolt names a protracted accumulation of rebellion that circulated within and beyond New York prison for at least 13 months prior to what ultimately accumulated in Attica prison between September 9th and the 13th of 1971. Hold on a second. Yeah, I've read that Black Radical Tradition. Thank you. As I can't say this, Trouillot, Trouillot, asserts, quote, the historical narratives within which an actual event fits could precede that event itself, at least in theory, but perhaps also in practice. Indeed, the narrative practices of the people I spoke to troubled the coherent, linear, and bounded notions of the Attica Rebellion. Rather, these figures narrated their involvement in multiple rebellions, both large and small, some preceding the September Rebellion in Attica, others emerging in its wake, some confined to a single prison, others dispersed across multiple incarceral sites, city jails, state prisons, mental institutions, urban streets, foreign territories, and so on. From this perspective, Attica functions as I can't say this word. Right back. Metonym for the temporarily, geographically, and politically diverse structure of the revolt to which many roots and branches connect and extend in different, sometimes contradictory directions. So, said Gary McGivern, imprisoned in Green Haven when Attica erupted, who authored a poem claimed, quote, Attica is our heritage and our beginning, end quote. My decision to organize this book around the paradigm of war arose from listening to movement elders and taking what they had to say seriously. Quote, we are the tip of the spear, end quote, wrote Jalil Montcalm in the letter to me years ago, a veteran of the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army, who in the earlier years in the 1980s was accused of attempting to foment another Attica. Montcalm had been incarcerated for over 4 decades on the range of intensely politicized charges, including the conviction for the assassination of 2 New York Police Departments, NYPD patrolmen, back in 1971, and a conviction that was facilitated by the FBI's anti-black counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO. I was captivated by this phrase, which is commonly used in military parlance to refer to combat forces deployed to penetrate an enemy's first line of defense. Initially, I interrupted it as a reference to the leading role that politicized prisoners having played in challenging the state. That is, I interpreted the state as a historical claim. It later occurred to me that in using this material idiom, Montcalm, I can't say Muntaqim, could also have been pointing to the location of incarcerated people, quote, behind enemy lines, such that their effective organization could catalyze movements beyond the walls. In other words, maybe he was developing this phrase as a tactician, much like Frantz Fanon was when he wrote, quote, "It was among these masses, in the people of the shanty towns and in the lumpen proletariat that the insurrection will find its urban spearhead," end quote. However, there are more chilling possibilities. The war paradigm means that it is also possible to interpret Mantiquin statements from the point of view of the state. This would make incarcerated people, and especially incarcerated black revolutionaries, the tip of the counterinsurgency spear that has pierced through the front line of this opposition and on its way towards shrinking a more essential target, us. As the story about war, tip of the spear mobilizes these various interpretations of the term, analyzing the cutting edge of carceral struggle and seen from both sides of the blade. We got 20 minutes. Let me see where, can you remember 21? People, can you remember? Yeah, thank you. Can you remember in 21? 21. Just want to see how much more we have left. So we have 20 minutes. 21, Jesus. This is a long section. See, 21. Ooh, it's like 9 pages left. All right, let's continue. Yeah, and that's why I'm reading it. I've heard about it. So the reason why I got enticed to read this, Greg, is because on Two Spirits Live, I don't know which episode it was, but on Two Spirits Live, the episode where they had I remember, I can't, but they talked about the tip of the spear and how it's trending pretty much, and it's a must read. So that's one of the reasons why I've said after I'm done with all the dialectical materials and historical materials stuff that I'm going to go into Black Radical Traditions, and this is the first book I decided to read. So thank you for the validation. I appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and stop here since this is the beginning of the book. We're going to stop where it says incarceral war. I just wanted to get into this book a little bit. Oh my gosh, it's not going to let me. It's not going to let me. I'm going to have to write a note down. I'm going to have to write a note because it won't let me. Where's my notes? This is my Principles of Communism notes. All right. Tip of... shit. Hold on, everybody. Pages 21. So we stopped on 21. We're going to start at incarceral wars. We're still in introduction. Carceral, not incarceral, carceral. And this is still introduction. All right. Anybody have anything to say about what we just read? I understand if no one does because we just started it out. Does anybody have anything to say? I know I'm closing it a little early.
Nah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Not really much other than people need to quit leaving out groups of marginalized people. That includes homeless people, incarcerated people. Like, when it comes to the most marginalized, they often get either put as a footnote or treated as if it means nothing. So yeah, it's. I think that the centering of this is very needed because
two different things.
People.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't know you were finished. My bad.
No, you're good. But I was saying that there are certain people that claim to be for liberation and that, but they never speak on this type of stuff.
And, like, I'm looking forward to reading this book and to getting a better. Oh my gosh, another appeal. This is like the 8th one now.
I think it has to do with the fact that there's bars. Like prison
Probably.
bars.
But people have more egregious backgrounds than this. Fucking hell.
Well, we have to remember that we're using the standards of egregious of the American government.
Yeah,
So-
true.
Bars are more egregious than swastikas.
Do you are you looking forward to listening to this book more as we get deeper into it?
Oh yeah,
Does it sound good?
definitely.
All right, good,
Yeah.
good. All right, so we'll read this book and we'll keep diving into it and stuff like that. People are welcome to come up, ask questions and stuff like that. You know, Joe, did you have anything, even though it's just the introduction? If you don't, it's fine too. I wonder if I can circle this. Can I circle this? No, you're good. Okay. Let's see here. Let me see if I can circle this. No, it won't let me circle it. All right, 21 Incarceral Wars. Okay. All right, I'm closing it early because we finished the other book and I kind of wanted to get into this just to see. Seems like it's going to be fun to listen to. All right, everybody. I will talk to you later. Have a good night.